8:09. A very good morning to you. My name is Adele Onyango. I have the remix to Zigo on the way. I haven't played it for you in a minute, but we are so super excited to have joining us somebody who we love because he's very active on Twitter. So here we love people who are especially active on Twitter. We have the U.S. ambassador to the 254, Robert Godec, in studio with us, but on Twitter it's at Bob Godec. Good morning.
True. Good morning.
How are you doing?
I am terrific this morning, Adele. A huge hamjambo to everyone out there listening this morning across Kenya.
Oh man, and you're no stranger to Kiss. Like, we are basically family, because this is the third time now we're having you on Kiss FM. We're super excited. But first things first, most of the conversation that's going around right about now, being such a monumental year for Kenya, is of course the elections. Okay, so we'll stick it from around January, where we're pushing on air, we're pushing, go out, register to vote, and so there were some people who actually did register but didn't turn up to vote because voter apathy. I'm voting for who? Why? What change is it going to bring to me? And I know this is something that you're very passionate about. We're looking at voting for our next president. And it's scary if somebody is still thinking that it's not going to change a thing. So what would you tell somebody who's thinking like that?
What I would tell anyone who's thinking like that is your vote matters. It's only through the ballot box that you can bring political change. Everybody should care about their government, about whether it's delivering services, whether it is doing the things that they want it to do. And so the only way you can bring change is through your vote, through your ballot. But I would just tell you as well that it's important to get engaged even beyond voting. It's important to think about the issues, to read about them, to talk to your friends. Maybe get involved in a political campaign. There is no doubt that democracy is an extraordinarily powerful way for people to affect their lives, to bring change, to bring good things, to bring improvements. If you don't like something that's going on in your country, you don't like the corruption, you want more jobs, you think kids should have better education, how do you get those things? You get out there, you get organized, you go, you vote. And I like, the last time that we met was at Nisho Power. And I think it's very, very important for you and I to know that our power is in our votes. It almost feels very, when you wake up and you watch the news or you hear the news and you're just like, oh my God, not again. How can I change this? Your vote is your power, isn't it? Your vote is your power. That is absolutely true. It's true in the United States and it's true in Kenya. It's the way you tell the world and your leaders what you want.
Now, in the next 3 minutes, I know there are very many people who hear that the U.S. is very, very vocal when it comes to the Kenyan elections, all right? And there has been conversations, especially with what recently happened, about international observers. Why are other countries talking about our politics, our elections? Why does it bother them so much? So in the next 3 minutes, I think Ambassador Robert Godec is the right person to answer those questions right here on Kiss FM. Do stick around for that. With Adele Onyango. And of course, we have U.S. Ambassador to the 254, Robert Godec, live in studio. Crispin Lukidi saying, yes, I've always wanted to hear from him. Okay, so we made it happen. So, this year, I think, has been a year of many firsts for Kenya, all right? A year of many firsts, and some of them very, very powerful as well. But one of the things that not many Kenyans understand, all right, when we see other countries, such as the United States of America, commenting on the Kenyan elections, guys are like, why? Why are they doing that? Why do they want this so bad? Even more than us.
Why are we saying things?
Yeah, so people don't understand it, and maybe you can help us understand it a bit more.
So let me start with this point. The United States and me personally, we had no candidate in this election. We had no favored political party. We supported and we support no particular person for any office. This is a choice for the Kenyan people to make. Now, why do we care? First, this is a kind of certainly a global phenomenon. It certainly happens among all the democracies. Kenya, for example, sent observers to the American election.
Yeah.
And, when people are elected to office, other countries send congratulations. We care because we're tied together. We're tied together by democracy, by shared values, by commitment to, human rights, by so many different things. Our two countries, Kenya and the United States, we have this extraordinary relationship. It's a beautiful tapestry. Yes, it's government to government. It's all the things we do, but it's also religious organizations. It's business. It's civil society. It's people to people. There are more than 100,000 Kenyans living in the United States, and there's 20,000 Americans living in Kenya. And we do so many things together, so much important work, healthcare, education, all of this. We're tied together. So yes, we care. We care about the future of your country passionately. We don't make choices on your leaders. You make those choices. But we do care about what happens here.
I think this year has seen a lot of, social media being used for good, but also a lot of propaganda out there as to, okay, this is happening because of A, B, C, D. And it gets very hard to know what's real, what's fake, what's, what has a bit of truth in it. But I think also, following the ruling of the Supreme Court, there was a lot of talk about the international observers that you've mentioned, and people were like, okay, so what were they doing then? You know what I mean? So, can you shed some light on that? Because that conversation has gone on, and with some credible doubts, people wondering, okay, what were you observing then if the Supreme Court has ruled this?
Well, first of all, that Supreme Court decision is clearly historic. It is a remarkable moment for Kenya, and it's a remarkable moment for the world. And obviously, this election had problems. Everybody, including the international observers, did note and observe problems during the course of the election. But what really matters is the Supreme Court is the one place constitutionally mandated to make a judgment. Was the election good or bad? And their judgment was there were irregularities and illegalities, and that the election must be rerun. So that is really critically important. And it's good to see Kenya moving toward that new election, which does need to take place. On the observers, the observers, both the international ones and domestic, they were here obviously to look at what was going on, and they did. They praised some things like the patience of Kenyans lining up by their thousands and millions to cast their ballots, but they also observed problems, which they did talk about. So, for example, the fact that the Form 34As were not posted very quickly. They observed problems in the results transmission process, which the Supreme Court mentioned. And those things were all part of what they said publicly and what they said privately about the election. What I would do is urge everyone to take a look at what the observers actually said in its totality, because there was a lot in there. And they did not really say the election was fully free, fair, and credible. They made a lot of observations. They made a lot of comments. It's part of international best practice, and I do think elections around the world are stronger because of observers. That said, I also think that certainly the Supreme Court decision is a wake-up call for observers. And we are taking a look right now at our own processes and procedures around observing elections. I know that places like the Carter Center in the EU, they're taking a look. How can we do this better? Because clearly the Supreme Court decision says we didn't do good enough. We need to do better, and we will do better.
And how do we do that? Okay, so in the next 3 minutes, something that I'm passionate about, and I know you are as well, is youth involvement, not just in elections, but in bringing about change. So if you see something that you don't like in our country, you're like, okay, it's also my country. How do I change this up? And we're definitely going to be getting to that. Some amazing ideas coming up. So do stick around for that in the next 3 minutes. But we are still hanging out with the U.S. ambassador to the 254, and I can call you Bob, right?
You should call me Bob Adele. You should, please. I much prefer
Twitter handle at Bob Godec. Okay. So before I ask more questions, Willie Alaro has just tuned in, and he says, please ask Mr. Godec, do you think the same people who conducted the past election can conduct a transparent one in October?
So I think I would start here. Both the Constitution and the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court in its order, said that the IEBC needs to run the new election.
Yeah.
So that's clear. There's the constitutional provision, but there's also a court order that it needs to be the IEBC. That said, clearly, when you have illegalities and irregularities, there need to be changes.
Yeah.
There need to be changes in personnel. There need to be changes in procedures. Things have to be different. It can't be the same election over again.
Yeah.
But the decisions about what those changes need to be, well, first we need to see the full Supreme Court order, which we should see within the next couple of days. But then it really has to be the commissioners in the IEBC who make the decisions about what happens. The commissioners should listen to the two political parties, so they should listen to NASA, they should listen to Jubilee. What do they want? What sorts of changes do they believe are appropriate? They should look at the processes and procedures. They should consult with electoral experts. They should make those changes. But the election needs to be rerun consistent with the Constitution and the Supreme Court order.
Yeah. Do you think with the timelines that we have that is possible?
I do think it's possible. I think it's a huge challenge, a huge lift. So I would encourage everybody to give the IEBC the space it needs to do the work it needs to do. At the same time, I would also encourage the IEBC to be absolutely as transparent as possible, to be as inclusive as possible, to talk to everybody about what the problems were and how to correct them.
Okay.
Listen, make decisions, get the election done.
Okay. And I love that you say everybody, because in all of this, it's very hard if you're not part of the IEBC, if you're not, key leaders in Jubilee or NASA, if you're just, Adele coming to work or, Willie going about his business, tweeting his questions. It's very hard to know what your role is during this time. What are we meant to do? How are we meant to approach the conversation or the information that comes in? How are we meant to react? How are we going to ensure that we play our role? What is that role?
Well, I think the role for everybody at the moment is obviously, in the first instance, to read, to follow, to listen, to talk, to have conversations with friends about what's going on, and to be a participant in the process, to be part of the conversation about your nation's future. At the same time, everyone has to be careful, because there is an extraordinary amount of frankly, rubbish, nonsense that's out there. There are all sorts of crazy claims that are being made. For instance, on Twitter recently, there was the claim that the IEBC servers were at the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to be careful about what they're listening to. And everyone needs to avoid stoking hatred or helping to incite violence or doing other things that create problems. Politics should not be life and death.
True.
Nobody should be dead because of an election. And so I would just encourage everybody to, be a positive participant, be part of the process, think about your vote, talk to politicians, as I said, read, listen, all of the rest of it.
But also investigate the conversation that are brought forth your way, especially with social media. Like, it's very easy for somebody to write down anything.
And they do.
And and then somebody thinks it's true and then starts, oh no, the stuff is at the U.S. Embassy. Like, no, guys, just really evaluate what lands on your timeline, okay? But also, in the next 3 minutes, two things. Yes, how can youth be part of the change? Is it only via voting, or is there more that you and I can do? But also, how are we going to make sure that we rid the 254 of this horrible thing that we call tribalism? That conversation has got to be had. It's coming up. Dope. We're hanging out with the U.S. ambassador to Kenya. Bob Godec is here. A big shout out to Oyo Daktari, who is listening from Kisumu and saying, loving the conversation, as well as Maureen Tini, who's also tuned in. So some of the questions that came about around this election situation is about young people. Yes, there's voter apathy. But going out to vote is not the only way that can change. It is one very powerful way. But you can also now, to enhance that, start running for key positions as a young person. Don't you think so? Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyone who, wants to get involved, change their world, make the place better, make Kenya extraordinary, even more extraordinary, You can get involved. You can run for, leadership in your school, for example. I mean, you could start to get involved there. You can get involved with a civil society organization, a group that's doing something to strengthen democracy, advance human rights, or do some other thing. There's always a million things that you can do to change your world. And the key thing is to go out, talk to people, look at the opportunities, whether it's, going down to help clean up a beach or something like that on the coast, or whether it's getting involved in a political organization. There's so many things you can do. But yes, and you can certainly run for office.
Yeah.
And bit by bit, move up the chain, and maybe someday even become president of Kenya.
Yeah, so I was really excited with this election. It's not only about the women who got into office, but also about the young people, even the ones who didn't make it in. I was like, you ran. That for me is a win in itself,
It is a win. And the truth is, when you run and you put your ideas out there and you talk to people, even if you don't end up in office, you may in fact be bringing change because you're changing the conversation and you're putting the ideas out there. That's very powerful. If you get elected, even better, obviously. But the truth is, you've made a contribution. Yeah.
So, and speaking about young people in Kenya, I mean, I always believe that if anybody's going to read Kenya of tribalism and the negative implications that come along with it, it's definitely going to be my generation.
I think you're right. And I think it's critically important because tribe is still too important in Kenya. Everyone should honor and respect their culture and their background and everything. But at the same time, it shouldn't dominate life, and it shouldn't control, for example, who you vote for office.
Yeah.
People should be evaluating candidates based on their ideas, their contributions. Are they going to bring the change I want to see? You should think about your vote that way.
Yeah.
But tribe, it matters a lot in Kenya, and I would argue it matters way too much. Nobody should be again kind of doing everything based solely on their tribe.
Yeah.
You should be reaching out and understanding. In the end, we're much more alike as people. We share much more.
True. We go through the same struggles.
Exactly. Our lives are hard. And it doesn't really, it's like, race or sex or all of these other things, obviously they're small differences, but they're not important, and they shouldn't affect how we treat one another. We should always treat other people with respect.
There's always that conversation that you find that very many young Kenyans get a lot of pressure from either their parents or their grandparents when it comes to tribe. And it comes from small things like, don't bring this certain person from a certain tribe as a husband or as a wife, and small things. So how would you tell a young Kenyan who's listening, who hears that daily and is trying to battle that, how do they handle that situation? Because even just that fight, it starts from home.
I would encourage people to have conversations around this, whether it's with their parents or with their peers or anyone. And I would always emphasize what we share, what we have in common, our humanity, and the fact that our values should matter more than what particular tribe we're from or other things. And again, we should treat one another with respect. But I do think that it's important for people to have conversations around this.
Yeah. To demystify it.
At the U.S. Embassy, for example, we have groups and programs to help bring people together so they can have conversations around these issues. So we can share, our cultures and increase understanding. And I do think that having that kind of conversation and dialogue, it's very important, very powerful.
Very important as well. Okay, so we have a few more minutes left, so do send through those questions at Kiss100 Kenya on Twitter, at Bob Godec on Twitter as well. The hashtag is Adele and Shafi on Kiss, and I will definitely ask those questions in the next 3 minutes. And we are hanging out with the U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Bob Godec, and guys are sending through their questions. One of them from King Tess actually did remind me of the accept and move on tag around elections, and I feel like that's stemmed from fear. I think we were like, okay, let's not ruffle any feathers. You know what happens in post-election violence. Let's not go back there. But King Tess is saying, please ask Bob Godec, should any party loss lead to a repetition? Considering the Kenyan economy, security matters, should we just, move on?
So, I think I would say two things, Adele, in response to that question. The first is, the Supreme Court said that there were illegalities and irregularities in this election. And no one should simply accept and move on from illegalities and irregularities. Elections need to be free, fair, and credible.
And you deserve them to be
You
that
deserve
way.
them to
you
be
who
the-
voted, you who's running.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Kenyan people deserve the best possible
Yeah.
election. It really is that simple, I think. The Constitution needs to be respected, and the people need to have their votes heard,
Yeah.
properly counted, properly transmitted, properly recorded, and the result announced, and that result needs to be fair. You know, at the same time, obviously, in any election, politicians, somebody wins, somebody loses.
Yeah.
And when it's fair, at that point, you should say, yeah, I accept the result, the will of the people. Every politician should have two speeches. One where they accept and they say, thank you to everyone who voted for them,
Yes.
and thank you for giving me victory. And the other one where they say, thank you to everybody who voted for them, and congratulations to the other person.
Yeah.
Two speeches. That's
Yeah.
what I would urge. But elections need to be free, fair, and credible.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen.
And we deserve
You
that.
deserve it.
We deserve that. You who voted, you who stood in line for over 2 hours, come on, you deserve that. Another thing that I would want to say for the people who have, what can you tell people who have completely lost hope in IBC? Completely lost hope, even if there are changes.
Well, I would not lose hope in the IEBC. I mean, it is the constitutionally mandated body to carry out this election. The court ordered that it do so, and the truth is institutions can be improved. And I think the commissioners have a tough job ahead of them,
Yeah.
but I think they can do it. Again, if they listen, if they consult, if they work hard, if they make changes, I think they can do the job.
Yeah. So at the top of the hour, Joel is definitely going to be giving you guys an update on the IBC in October, which is going to be a big month for us. But the Supreme Court decision, all right, was very powerful.
It was extraordinary. It was so impressive, and Kenyans should be so proud of the Supreme Court and proud of their democracy. This was a historic shout out for democracy.
Yeah.
And I think it's been heard all around the world. And Kenyans should be proud of what's happened.
What was the U.S. Reaction to it?
I think the U.S. reaction was that. I mean, the U.S. reaction was, this is a historic opportunity, really. And everybody now needs to look at what the Supreme Court said, both their original order and now the more detailed, full statement that they're going to put out shortly, and follow it, and take this moment to strengthen democracy, take this moment to strengthen institutions, take this moment to hold a better election, to ensure that the will of the Kenyan people is fully observed and respected. You guys deserve this.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
And before I let you go, Bob, I want to now throw it all the way back to when you were 18.
That was a very long time ago.
You don't have to tell us the year so that people don't calculate. But if you could go back and have a conversation with 18-year-old Bob, what would you tell him?
So I think what I would tell him is, believe in yourself. I know when I was 18, I was full of a lot of emotion and passion and doubt. And, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me?
Yeah.
Do I have a future? You know, I spent actually a long time looking for a job when I was young. And it wasn't easy to find something that works for me. And so what I would say is, believe in yourself. Get up every morning and, get out there, try things, talk to people, explore, experiment, dare to try. A very famous American inventor, the guy who invented the light bulb, in fact, once said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't succeed. And the truth of it is that 10,001st thing may be the success. That may be the answer. That may be the thing that gets you the job you want, or gets you the family you're hoping for, or whatever. But you've got to get out there, put yourself out there, dare to be great, have courage, have faith, be kind. to other people and just reach out and be yourself, and you can and you will succeed.
Okay. Hey, you're taking us to church there. Thank you so much for coming through. I think we have a deeper understanding. I can see Kadasha Kim is saying, ooh, loving the conversation. I've gotten so much knowledge. Now I understand why the states comments on our elections, and I understand my role come October. So thank you so much, Bob, for coming through and hanging out with us this morning on Kiss FM.
Adele, it's been wonderful. It's been very special. Thank you very, very much for inviting me, and I really hope to come back for another visit.
Of course.